Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? How are you doing, Don?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us today. I'm honored to moderate this conversation with you. Don, you are founder, chairman, and CEO of the Peebles Corporation, which is the most active, privately held real estate investment and development corporation in the U.S. Yes.
Thank you.
With, by the way, a multi-billion-dollar portfolio. And Don, that also makes you, and you're recognized as one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the US, which is very fitting because what we want to talk about in this conversation is how do you build a company? How do you become a builder and grow a company from the beginning? And so what I like to do is I like to start at the beginning. Don, you worked in the early years as a congressional page and intern with the US Congress. In high school, you did that. You then went on to college planning to pursue a career in medicine. But at 19, you pivoted into real estate. You started as an appraiser, and within 3 years, you had started your own company. You secured major clients from financial institutions to the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. And at just 23 years old, Mayor Marion Barry appointed you to Washington, D.C.'s Board of Equalization and Review, and within a year, you became chairman, one of the youngest in any board in Washington, D.C. history. So it's very clear there was a lot of talent and hustle right out the gate. Your trajectory was astronomical at a very early age. So I want to kind of have you go back and look at those early years. What lessons from those early years or opportunities that you took advantage of laid the groundwork for the rest of your career as CEO of the Peebles Corporation?
So, I think if I say where my success came from, it really came from one person. One person, my mother. And what my mother taught me was to dream. And so my mother had me at 19 years old, and she worked as a secretary and then got divorced from my father and then got a real estate license. And I watched her career. And she was one of 5 sisters, her 4 surviving sisters. I just saw 3 of them over Thanksgiving, and one of them lives here outside of Atlanta, and I'm going to go see her for dinner tonight. But it was a village, but it was about dreaming. I think the key ingredient to starting a business and excelling in a business is dreaming and continuing to dream and going out and making those dreams come true. Somebody has to be successful, somebody has to win, and somebody has to make their dreams come true. So why not be you? And that's kind of the approach I've taken throughout my career. Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I see Ambassador Young coming in here, and I met Ambassador Young when I was a page for the House of Representatives in 1976, before he became ambassador to the UN when President Carter was elected president. And so seeing a lot of that showed me that what my mother told me, that I could do anything I wanted to do, I saw it as possible because I saw other black men and women doing things at a young age.
That's right. And over 40 years later, I think you've built something pretty incredible, wouldn't you say?
Look, I've fulfilled and achieved some of my dreams, but I'm just getting started.
That's right.
I'm not done yet.
That's right. That's right. And I think, you've been pretty vocal about the challenges that you faced along the way. Obstacles, skepticism you faced. I think at one point you even said that it's gotten harder as the business has grown. So specifically, what got harder? And how did you navigate those challenges? Was it the financing? Was it regulatory? What was it?
Well, it was more about going into an environment where people did not believe I belonged. Mm-hmm. And so I've been going into rooms and I've been going into environments where people don't believe I belong, and then they're also generally not rooting for me to be successful. And I kind of overcame it. Interestingly enough, as a kid, I played basketball, and I played all the way through high school. And all my teammates would always get up and get excited about the home games. Mm-hmm. Every game I had where I performed my best, where my 40-point games were always away games, because I like nothing better than to going into somebody else's home field and home court and beating them there in front of their fans, in front of their friends. And so I've taken that with me. I like playing the away game. My wife and my family make kind of fun of me when I watch movies. I generally root for the underdog or the bad guy. And they said, you perceive yourself as a bad guy. I perceive myself as an insider's outsider. And I'm an insider because I've been successful and have some wealth, but I'm an outsider because people still don't want me there. And I think that's based on how our society operates. I think if you look at it in your business, let's take private equity and venture capital. Right now, as we sit here in this room today, there's about $88 trillion invested in venture capital and private equity. Less than 1.3% of that money is invested in firms run or owned by women and people of color combined. Well, women represent almost 52% of the US population. So let's just think about how broad that disparity is. And then people of color represent nearly 45% of this country's population. So the vast majority, 98.7% of venture capital and private equity capital goes to white men who are a minority in this country. And yet they've been able to hold on. And so this form of economic apartheid has limited the progress of women and people of color, especially black Americans. And what's the most frustrating is that I hear that there's no longer DEI and we want to end DEI. Now, I want to end DEI as well, but for a different reason. See, I think that we need to get back to what economic inclusion should be about. And this country, my view is anybody who voluntarily immigrates to this country owes America a debt. We don't owe them a debt. However, my ancestors and most of the people's ancestors in this room were kidnapped and dragged over here and put in deplorable conditions and provided free labor to this country for 249 years. And then another 150 years of Jim Crow and segregation that, thanks to Ambassador Young and Dr. King and so many others, ended that. And so now, after all that oppression, we want to say that, hey, we have a meritocracy here. And we have a meritocracy, and we can make it equivalent to the Indianapolis 500 race, where you got driver A in a Ferrari and driver B in a Ferrari, and they're both equally talented drivers, but driver A starts off on lap 450, and driver B starts off on lap 1, and they say, may the best driver win. Well, the only way the driver who starts off on lap 1 wins is if driver A crashes and burns. And so that's the economic system that this country has today when it comes to black Americans. And so part of what I recognize I have to confront it every day, so I'm motivated by excelling and winning in spite of that, so that it proves to other people that you can achieve in an unfair game. You can beat people when the game is rigged against you, and there's no excuse to not try and to not excel. You just have to work harder. And I think if we get back to the mindset that propelled us through civil rights, then we will excel economically. But that's the frontier. And so I confront it every day because what I represent, I think, is progress. What I represent is a new day. And right now, I think we've got more headwinds than we've had in my lifetime in terms of making progress. So that means we have to redouble our efforts. And so that's part of capitalism.
Yeah.
Excuse me for 1 second. You know, I'm an energy guy. And you know who Jessica is because she works for a huge global firm. And you know if she's there, she's a bad sister. Yes. But when you hear Don Peebles, you maybe, unless you're a geek like me and you research everything, you may not completely understand why he's on the stage by himself. We just had 3 billionaires on stage together, and we have Don Peebles being interviewed by himself. I don't think you understand. I don't think you get. I don't think you. Maybe we spoiled you. A billionaire here, a billionaire there. They just falling off the roof. They got a billionaire next to 100,000 air, next to somebody trying to buy some air. reset. This man grew up in the hood, D-A-H-O-O-D. He grew up and had his first job as helping a city councilman in Washington, D.C., Ward 8, I believe. Marion Barry, when he was a councilman. He did his first development deal. Somebody tried to steal it from him. He was 23 years old, just like you, with a business with a dream, trying to shove somebody's business card down, trying to get somebody to pay attention to him. He hustled and worked hard. Please listen to me now. Slow it down. This man has developed $8 billion worth of real estate. He's black. He's light-skinned, but he's black. I didn't say 8 billion Mexican pesos, 8 billion Russian rubles. I'm on the biggest economy in the world. This man came up from nothing, and he flies now by a private helicopter. I don't. He's got a family office. He's doing generational wealth. He just set his family up for business. He's a father. He's a family man. He's a husband. He's a bad brother. Can we reset this once again? Don damn Peebles.
Thank you.
And I think, Don, off the back of that, one of the things that you're also known for is using business as a tool for transformation, your words. And you've trademarked, right, this term affirmative development, right? So everything that you've talked about in terms of the history and your own personal journey, you're now in a position to kind of use your business to help empower others. Can you talk a bit about what it means to have affirmative development, what it means to execute that by way of your company, and more importantly, how is that a strategic advantage in this capitalist world?
Well, I mean, so very good question, by the way. So, and one, I want to thank John Hope Bryan for the kind words and the leadership that he's done for decades. Thank you. It's interesting. So I start off with, because I've reflected a lot about my life. I'm 65, and I've reflected a lot about why I'm here and what I'm doing. And so, as I said, I'm one person is responsible for me accomplishing the things I've accomplished, and that was my mother. However, I understand why I'm here, why my mother got to be able to have a dream for her son, and that's because of people like Andrew Young, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, John Lewis, and so many others. And they did not go and give their lives. And I think Ambassador Young deserves multiple applause for all of us. So they didn't give their life so that I could have some more numbers on a computer screen. They didn't give their life so I can fly on a Sikorsky's back and forth from the Hamptons to New York City. They didn't give their lives for me to, be able to have some wealth. They gave their lives so everybody could have a better chance at life. I happen to have been the recipient of that hard work and that personal sacrifice that so many people made. And I got some benefits way beyond my expectations. But that isn't what I was seeking to do. I grew up in the civil rights movement. I was born in 1960, and I can remember Dr. King's assassination. I can remember Robert Kennedy's assassination. So I don't feel my role is to make money. I think my role, what good would I be, and what kind of person would I be to come and tell everybody, hey, that I'm so special because I made some money, or this is a system that's fair and you guys just aren't trying hard enough, or that everything's good now. The reality is it's not. And my view is that if I can have been successful in achieving in this environment and I call it unfair, then people really will say, yeah, it is unfair. And my role is not to make more money for the sake of making more money. It's to use my business opportunities as a vehicle of transformation. So just because I built some buildings and we say $8 billion of projects or the billions of dollars of buildings that I built, that by itself doesn't mean anything. What I'm most proud of is how I built them and who built them and who received the economic benefits from me building them. And so when I say affirmative action, or I say affirmative development, which is a trademark, and I give my wife credit for it. She's the one who came up with the phrase, affirmative development, because I've always been frustrated that all of a sudden affirmative action is a bad word after 20 years of implementation. And how 20 years could ever make up for 400 years is, to me, an unsolvable math equation. So my view is that my role is to make it better. And if I could buy a fair and equitable system, I would give every dime I have so that everyone else could benefit from a fair and equitable system. And so I'm much more focused on fairness and opportunities for others, and I'm more of a political leader or political activist than I am a real estate developer. Real estate development is a vehicle to help me bring about change and to make it better. Yeah. And I feel that obligation because as a young teenager in high school, I was on Capitol Hill as a page when members of Congress like Andrew Young, Ron Dellums, Charles Diggs, John Conyers, and so many of them were fighting to make it better for us. And so I'm just doing my part. And I hope more of us will do our part to make this a better place.
Yes. And lastly, as you look at, I know we have a room full of entrepreneurs or folks who are trying to chart their own paths, right? If you were that 19-year-old but operating in today's market, or you were just getting started, what's kind of one path that you would take? What's one approach that you would take as a word of advice to the audience?
Well, I think that, as I said, I think it's very important to have a dream, and a dream of where you want, and visualize kind of where you want to take yourself. And I think it's important to have a purpose. I mean, if I didn't have the purpose that I've spent this time outlining to you, I'd have quit a long time ago. With money, I mean, $10 million was more than I would have ever thought I'd ever have in my whole life. I'd have stopped then. First building, done, over with. Certainly, by the time I got to $100 million, I would say, you know what? I'm doing something else, because it's a pain in the ass, grind out business every day where I have to deal with some very difficult people every day. I tell my daughter, I don't get to work with people I like. Hopefully I can respect some of the people I work with. And so I'm motivated by something else. I think you've got to be motivated to sustain your goals and to be able to achieve. You have to be motivated by something bigger and more substantive than money. And then whatever, you can applaud that. If I lost every dime today, I'd still be Don Peebles. And I believe Don Peebles could figure it out again and again, right? So it's what we are and what we stand for. So I think, so it's a dream. It's standing for something and being willing to fight for it, and to be able to be the best at it. And that doesn't happen at once, and it doesn't happen when you get to a place of success. It's a daily exercise. Every day I try to learn more about my business and what I'm doing. So I'm a student of the business, and I do that every day. And so I would say being a student of what you're achieving and learning it and trying to be the best at it, and then you got to go out and do it and not be afraid to lose. I think people are afraid to lose, and you go out and do it.
Be the best. Don't be afraid to lose. Everyone, join me in giving a round of applause for Don. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here comes Don.
Great job.
Thank you for giving these people the respect they deserve. You need to do research on both of these individuals. They're both changing the world. I also want to acknowledge Tyrese is in the house. Tyrese Gibson. Bill Duke, the legendary actor Bill Duke is here. Jason Lauren from the Breakfast Club is here. We're making smart sexy in Atlanta, Georgia.
I want to say one thing, by the way. You mentioned Tyrese. So Tyrese is my friend. And he's a great actor, but he isn't done yet either. You're going to see him as a great businessman. He is a true entrepreneur. And he's going to change a lot of things, especially here in Atlanta.
Thank you.
Thank you.